Kubrick's Universe, Episode 5, Dean Treadway. Real one.
Our highly skilled team are focused on bringing you the optimal experience.
So many answers we may never know. Too many questions, get on with the show. No time for the chorus, only this verse. It's Kubrick's Universe.
Open the podcast doors, Hal.
It's Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick podcast.
Millions of years ago, before the human race existed, an adventure began. An adventure that ultimately leads man to confront his own destiny in an odyssey of exploration.
Here's what started the whole thing.
Wow.
We thought it might be the upper part of some buried structure, so we excavated out on all sides.
And what's more, it seems to have been deliberately buried.
A shrieking monolith, deliberately buried by an alien intelligence, starts man on a mission 500 million miles into space. With 3 of its 5 crew asleep in hibernation, spacecraft Discovery 1 voyages towards Jupiter. Controlling the mission is a talking computer known as Hal.
Hal, you're the brain and central nervous system of the ship. Does this ever cause you any lack of confidence?
Let me put it this way, Mr. Raymer. No 9000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information.
In the first year of the 21st century, there is strange and wondrous beauty, startling experiences that jolt and mystify, and the danger of complete obliteration.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
And now, your journey is just beginning.
Alrighty then. Hey everybody, and welcome back. It's a new episode of Kubrick's Universe. Thanks for being with us. At the boards is Johnny Numero Uno, our producer, Mr. Steven Rigg. I'm your host and humble narrator, Jason Furlong. We have a really cool interview for you today with Dean Treadway. Dean is a movie geek. I mean a true expert in that field and a man with a passion to match Mel Gibson's Christ. Sorry, just a joke. Dean was brought up regularly attending Atlanta drive-ins and watched at least 4 or 5 films every week with his parents back in the 70s. So Dean got hooked at a pretty early age. After he graduated high school, he enrolled at Georgia State University, where he immediately was drawn to the school newspaper and got to interview Tom Cruise, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nicolas Cage, Stephen King, and Spike Lee, as well as dozens of other people in the movie biz. Now, Dean actually attended the premiere of Peter Hyams' 2010, the unofficial sequel, of course, to 2001, and he did so for a report feature for his school paper, and it didn't take long for his enthusiasm to take him forward to becoming the editor of the paper. He worked at one of the first video stores on the planet, called Video Room. It was in New York City, and there he first learned to talk films. And part of his job description was, in fact, recommending movie rentals to a lot of notable customers, including celebrities like Dick Cavett and Bill Cosby. Sorry. In the 90s, Dean worked at Atlanta's oldest movie theater, the Plaza, and in the programming department of Turner Network Television. He also co-hosted a movie review show on public access TV for a long time. Now, Dean Treadway is the co-host of Movie Geeks United, which is one of the favorite podcasts of we at Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society. It is one of the most well-loved movie podcasts out there, plain and simple. Over 4 million downloads, and they've been broadcasting since 2007. Dean's gotten to interview the likes of Greta Gerwig, Lalo Schifrin, Mike Lee, Burt Reynolds for the show, and he's represented Movie Geeks United at both New York and Atlanta film festivals. Dean's estimated that he's watched over 25,000 films, and he is the founder and creator of the brilliant Filmic Ability website. The website is called Filmic Ability. And it's your one-stop place to find out about movies, man. It's a real mine of movie info, a treasure trove. Dean is a movie expert, a writer, a blogger, filmmaker, editor, film festival programmer, actor, podcaster, and a very talented artist. He prefers to describe himself as an enthusiastic appreciator rather than a critic, which we find very cool. But whatever it is that he is, you can be sure to be enlightened by Mr. Dean Treadway. Dean, so awesome to have you on the show, man. Thanks for being with us. Welcome to Kubrick's Universe.
Wow, thanks. I've never heard it said. I've written about it, but I've never heard my life, encapsulated in that way. So it's great to hear.
We're going to make you a star.
Yay! It's about time.
You already are.
Well, I'm going to start by asking you a question. Why did you want to interview me for this thing?
Dean, I'll answer that one. Basically, I've been listening to Movie Geeks for about eight years now, and and then I subsequently went back for the first 3 years as well. So I'm kind of very familiar with you guys. And obviously you've done the Kubrick series, so I know you've got an interest in the subject. You posted on Facebook, last week or the week before, your 2001 blog, and just got me thinking. We're just starting doing these interviews, trying to speak to people who like Kubrick, who've worked with Kubrick, who've got an interest there. And I just thought you're going to be perfect. You're good on your podcast, so I thought you might like to join us on ours.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the show. It's funny. We do. I personally, I throw into the show, and I'm kind of in a bubble. I don't know who's reacting to it. I've only recently had, I've had a few fans reach out to me. A couple from the UK, and one from New Zealand, and one from India, and one from Atlanta. So I just don't know who's listening to it or whatever. So I'm glad people are listening to it. That's all I had to say.
It has a great reputation. I've known about Movie Geeks for not as long as Steven, but for years, certainly.
Well, that's good. I assume a lot of people are listening, so it's good. But it's kind of good also for me not to even know about it. When I talk to those two guys or three guys, depending on who's on the show or whatever, when we talk, I just like to think of it as like friends talking, like. So,
well, that's what this is. That's our approach for what it's worth.
Yes, yeah, I think that's the best way to go about it. So
absolutely. I mean, when we kind of hatched this idea, we all agreed it should be for the listeners as opposed to a bunch of fanboys kind of talking about how much we love Stanley Kubrick. It has to be, theater of the mind. It has to be interesting for the listeners, or it wouldn't be worth doing. So we have fun with it. We hopefully we just make it conversational amongst friends.
Yes, that's the best approach. Well, okay,
Agreed.
so I assume you have a lot of questions. So I guess fire away. I'm curious to see how this is going to turn out.
We're gonna have your name in lights overnight.
It's just a thrill to be here. So I'm ready to get to the question.
Let's do it. I mean, this is a thrill for me too, because me being a fledgling podcast host, getting to interview one of the best in the game. Our listeners are, in fact, being treated to Kubrick Universe's first meta podcast, if you will.
Yeah.
So, cool, and super cool. Away we go. I guess my first question, Dean, is by way of a quote of yours from your latest blog on your website, Filmicability, and I just want to read this quote because I think it's great. You said, 2001, A Space Odyssey has long been my favorite film. I first saw it at Atlanta's Rhodes Theater early in 1977 at age 10, though I suspect I caught a glimpse of it as a younger child while visiting a drive-in with my parents. I can still remember them loudly complaining about it in a way that instantly made me want to see it. When I finally did, its overwhelmingly eloquent vision transformed my soul, leading me into a life of film study, filmmaking, and film writing. After seeing it literally 100 times, at least 60 of them on the big screen, I unquestionably consider 2001 the best film that has ever been made or ever will be made in any genre, end quote. Wow. So, Dean, what was it that, and anything you can add that made you feel so strongly about 2001? Please describe.
Okay, well, let's just, I guess, go back to the first day that I remember seeing it, and I'll give you more emotional nuance than what's in than what's in the filmicability piece, because I sort of left the emotional nuance behind. In the piece, I didn't really try and dissect the movie for people or anything like that. I just wanted to make it. Just wanted to make the piece sort of entertaining for people to read. Okay, so the day that I remember seeing the film for the first time, I remember it was a Saturday afternoon. I went with my friend Jane Garvey, who was the next door neighbor to my grandmother, and she sort of helped me foment my early, I guess, intellectual development or whatever. She would give me books to read and certain albums to listen to, and we went to the movies a lot because she knew I loved the movies. So so I was with her, and she's also one of the people that kind of helped me figure out how to break down films in order to sort of see what was underneath what we were seeing, to understand the subtext of certain movies. I remember 2001 being an early one, but I remember later on, like certain movies we went to see together, like Ordinary People or things like that. Ordinary People in 2001, completely different movies, obviously.
Right.
But she helped me get to the emotional core of movies like Ordinary People. And with 2001, it was an emotional core, but also an intellectual one. Anyway, I remember going into the theater. I remember going to the Rhodes Theater was a great theater in Atlanta that closed down about in the maybe 82, or actually it might have been 84 that it closed down. But it was a great repertory cinema, and that's where I saw a lot of Kubrick films for the first time. But for 2001, I guess since it happened in 77, so right around that time, you had Star Wars,
of course,
the summer of 77. So it might have happened. I think it might have happened a little bit before me seeing Star Wars, to tell you the truth.
Wow.
I think it might have happened like in the spring. And Star Wars was like May
25th, yeah.
Right. So I think they were coinciding, but with 2001, like I said in the piece, I remember my parents talking about it. Maybe
Yeah,
on
tell us about that.
yeah. Well, I can remember being in the back seat, and we would always have discussions about the movies we had seen, whatever movies we had seen that night or whatever, as we were going home. And I remember my dad driving, and I think this was in context of a conversation about another movie that we had seen that we collectively thought was stupid and worthless, and and my dad said, "Well, it wasn't as bad as that 2001, man. That's the stupidest movie I've ever seen."
Oh my goodness!
They were flying in space, and then there's this thing in space, and there's this block, and then at the end there's a baby, and I remember my mom kind of. My mom actually came around to loving 2001, but
interesting.
At the time, she was not taken with it either, and I'm not even sure they ever saw it at a real theater. They might have seen it at the drive-in, I think.
Wow.
2001 at the drive-in seems like a kind of I'd like to see it, but it seems kind of unimaginable in some ways.
Yeah. Wow.
But, after hearing them talk about it and everything, it was just a big mystery. And seeing it with Jane that afternoon geez, it was a blur. Really. It was a blur of, I was overwhelmed by it. I really was, and I literally could not stop thinking about it for probably weeks. So I mean, it's difficult for me to even remember that first viewing of it, but it was overwhelming.
I think that's probably a bit of a phenomenon, Dean, in that well, I can just relate that, my parents were still dating in 1968, and they saw it, and they both, had the same story, which, well, in their case, I mean, they were young hippies in love, and, they probably had themselves a little joint before they went into the theater. I can't confirm that, nor do I want to throw my parents under the bus, but they were blown away by it, and they're, contemporaries, many of them were like, "Oh, I didn't understand it," and there was that line right down the middle. Wow, and 60 times on the big screen, man. How did you manage that?
Oh, geez. Okay, so, well, I must have seen it at the Rhodes probably about 10 times. It played there constantly. It was a mainstay. Almost every it was a repertory cinema, so almost every schedule had it playing at least once. And it was it was a theater that it had played at when it opened. So I think it was just a favorite of the owners of the theater. But not only that theater, but also I know it played at Toco Hills Theater, which was a theater that I worked at. It played at least at 2 theaters that I worked at.
Oh, wow.
And so I would go in there, when it played, so I would see it like 10 times in a week.
You got paid to watch 2001 on the big screen?
Well, I didn't. I probably didn't do it on the clock, but I definitely came in early. Then
I worked at a movie theater when I was in high school, and I watched many films while on the clock. So it's not like you're going to get fired if you say that you did that, my friend.
Yeah, no doubt. I definitely did watch a lot of movies on the clock. That's for sure. So
awesome.
I have over the years.
That's so cool.
I know. I loved it. I still cherish my memories working at movie theaters, even though maybe at the time I wasn't so thrilled with it. But I don't think I would even like it as much, now. I worked at them at just the right time when there was a lot of good stuff coming out. So
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, it's funny. The theater that I worked in high school is in my neighborhood, and it's an historic building. It was originally just one theater, and then in the 80s they divided it into a triplex. And but I had some great times and great memories, and a great girlfriend from junior to senior year. And you're right, it's not the same nowadays. The multiplexes just don't have that same charm, for lack of a better word. How did you get your job at the Rhodes Theater initially?
Well, it wasn't. I never worked at the Rhodes Theater, but I worked
My
at
bad.
Cocoa Hills Theater, which was just right down the street from my high school, and
Right.
I started working there when I was 15. Probably worked there until I was about 19, and it was actually the theater. That's actually the theater that eventually the last movie that I ever saw there was Eyes Wide Shut. Closed down 1999 or something like that. So, and it had the largest screen in the Northeast at the time. I'm sorry, in the Southeast at the time. The largest screen. It was a huge one-screen theater that had just a little under 1,000 seats. It eventually turned into a 90. It was a first-run theater, and eventually, when I was working there, it was a 99-cent theater, so you could come and see 2001 for 99 cents.
We had two theaters like that in our hometown growing up, and I remember the balcony seating and everything. So I have to ask you about Eyes Wide Shut. That's the last picture you got to see there on that screen. Now, what was your reaction to it, Dean? Did you like it? Were you indifferent?
I loved it, but I was a little perplexed by it.
Mm-hmm.
But I should backtrack and say that my first viewing of Eyes Wide Shut was actually at a preview screening. My boss at Turner Network Television, I wasn't working there at the time, but she called me and invited me to the screening because she knew I was a Kubrick fan, and so it was a big deal. I pretty much loved it from the beginning. I was, I could sense something was amiss with the orgy scenes because they were, that digital placement of the bodies and everything didn't seem very
right
to
right
me at all. I knew I can feel that there was something there. Also, of course, that screening I was very verklempt at that screening because I knew that this would be the last time that a Stanley Kubrick movie, released on the big screen. This would be the last time that I would feel this kind of mystery because, every time you went to see a Kubrick movie, before you saw it for the first time, there was just this overwhelming sense of mystery about it because you had only seen a couple of images from it, the previews, which were cut by Kubrick, were intentionally short and didn't reveal very much.
Right.
And so I was there was this sort of feeling of being overwhelmingly sad about it. Of course, seeing the film, it's funny that film is so challenging and so dense that there was I did feel like a danger of it going off the rails.
That's interesting.
Yeah, at one point I was like, is he losing us or whatever? I don't think that I was ready for the story to be told in that way, that sort of dreamy way. I wasn't ready for that from Kubrick because there's obviously a deep stylization with Kubrick, but there's also sort of this kind of adherence to the way things really are, and in that movie, he fools us a little bit. So
I think that's really well said. I also had the same sense of loss, and that this was going to be our final mystery to unravel. It was really sad, and I was perplexed by it. So I can relate. I'm guessing we're about the same age, Dean. So I mean, I remember going back to see it a second time in the theater, and then of course the DVD revolution had already happened, so I bought it. I only got to see it twice in the theater. How many times did you see it in its original theatrical run?
At least 10. At least 10, because...
At least 10, wow. Wow.
At least, because I remember seeing it, because I wanted to, I just, repertory cinemas were gone from Atlanta at this point. So, and if I was going to stay in Atlanta, which I've hopped back and forth between Atlanta and New York City. I've lived in New York about 10 years, so 10 years out of my life. So, if I was a full-time New Yorker, I wouldn't worry about it so much because it'll come on over at Film Forum or something like that. I'll be able to see it. But I was like, well, there's no more repertory cinema, so I'm gonna see this. I'm gonna see this movie as many times as I can. And actually, I feel I might have lowballed it with 10, because I saw it's got to be at least 10 because I saw it 3 times at Phipps Plaza. I must have seen it 4 times at Toco. It played there for 2 weeks. And so it's got to be about 10.
So were you writing movies at the time? Writing movie reviews. I don't want to say critic. At the time Eyes Wide Shut came out?
I was, and I actually wrote the review that you see on Filmicability, which is one of my first reviews that I posted back in, I think, 2008 or whatever, is the review that I wrote for it for a local magazine called Sideshow. And I went extremely long. They weren't used to this was a little, just a little magazine, and the review took up 4 pages. So they were not, and tiny type and everything. And I don't think they were used to that, but they printed the whole thing in its entirety. But of course, when I finally came around to realizing what a great tool the internet was in 2007 or whatever, and started Filmicability, I said, well, I've got to republish this, and I probably expanded it a little bit and stuff. But
Wow.
I've been writing. I really started writing about movies probably when I was like 16. And when I got into college, the first thing I did was go to the college newspaper and say, I want to be your film reviewer. And they put me on there like immediately. I mean, I think that day they gave me passes to, I think, my first movie that I reviewed was Repo Man.
Wow.
Which is
good movie. Yeah, great movie.
That's a good movie to start with. And then before I knew it, I was going to the 2010 premiere in Los Angeles, probably about not more than 2 months after I signed up to be the reviewer there. So, I really took to that, to writing about movies, and having a forum and seeing them printed out, people reading them. I really took to that very well, and I was really writing very heavily for the next 4 or 5 years. So
right. Well, I want to ask a few rapid fire questions so we can get back to 2001. How many times have you seen The Shining and Full Metal Jacket? Ballpark.
The Shining definitely comes in probably second because it screams so often. I mean, it really, that's the easiest Kubrick movie to see on the big screen. Now, I'm just talking about big screen totals here. That's probably about 25, I'd say.
Okay, wow. And FMJ, Full Metal Jacket?
That's a lot less. Probably only about 4 or 5 times, maybe. I don't know why that is. I think I do know why, because that was during the time that I was reviewing movies for the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just caught up with watching all these other movies. I wouldn't review all of those, but definitely would see them. Saw as many as I could. Yeah, and so that's why I probably saw that one less. I've seen them all on the big screen, all Kubrick movies on the big screen, except for I've never seen Killer's Kiss, which is my least favorite Kubrick movie.
Mm-hmm.
Never seen that on the big screen. I've never seen, of course, Fear and Desire on the big screen either.
No one has.
Yeah, very, very few. In Boston, they have a yearly Kubrick festival at the museum there. I guess the people in Boston have seen Fear and Desire on the big screen a little bit more.
I got to see 2001 at the Wang Center. I went to Emerson College, so when it came through in '97, we paid $6 ticket to watch it in 70 millimeter. At Boston, takes the Kubrick film series annually pretty seriously. It's awesome.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I've seen them all. Other than those two, though, I've seen them all on the big screen at least once. Spartacus, I've only seen once on the big screen, but I saw it at the Ziegfeld Theater in New York City, which was about as big as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
One of the great theaters in New York City history, now closed down, unfortunately. But so I've seen them all at least once. Probably in order, it'd be 2001 most, then The Shining, then Strangelove, then probably Eyes Wide Shut.
Who is Stanley Kubrick?
Stanley Kubrick. Not really sure, but at a guess, I probably think it was George and Mildred Kubrick's son who went off to America, Tinseltown. He was like a prodigal son. He was sent off with nothing, and he ended up being quite a famous bloke because he made a couple of films. Can't really rhyme any off, but I know that he's some kind of film producer, short director, who probably got away with skin of his teeth through not asking girls to sleep with him for parts in films like all the rest of them. That's about it, really.
So with regards to 2001, your latest blog on the film, you wrote, and I believe the quote is, 2001's widescreen 65 millimeter Super Panavision photography was originally intended for the Cinerama process, but as Cinerama is now extinct, most audiences have only seen 2001 in either 35 millimeter anamorphic, or if they're lucky, in 70 millimeter, though mostly these days theater audiences are probably watching the 2.35 2 to 3.5 aspect ratio digital files. Can you elaborate on the difference between those formats a little more for our listeners?
Well, I mean, I guess I won't pretend to be a complete expert in this, but with 35 millimeter, obviously the screen's not going to be as big. The image is not going to be as clear, not as sharp, and they're taking a 35 millimeter print, which if you looked at the picture on the print itself, it would look all squeezed together, and they unsqueeze it by using an anamorphic lens, and it stretches things out. Now, with 70 millimeter, you don't need that anamorphic lens. I think I'm correct on that. And obviously, the picture.
Sounds right.
obviously the picture is bigger and clearer and sharper. That said, the last time I saw 2001 on the big screen was I think the first time that I'd ever watched it projected digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And I have very strong feelings about digital versus.
Tell us what's your opinion on digital prints compared to film in projections?
Well, film will always be better, and I actually wrote a piece called "Defending 2001" on the Filmability blog,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the difference between watching something on film and watching it in digitally. The big difference for me, and it's something that's imperceivable, and people will see as I don't know, maybe it's an interesting theory, but it's not theory, it's fact. When you're watching a film that is projected on celluloid, your mind is constantly engaged because you're watching a picture and a picture and a picture and a picture project 24 times a second. And your mind is creating the illusion of movement. That's all in your mind.
Precisely. Yeah.
Your mind is constantly making a connection between
filling in the blanks. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, but with digital, all of that work is done for you already. You're not seeing a picture and a picture and a picture. All that stuff is blended together for you.
Yeah.
So it's easier, I believe, for your mind to wander away.
That is a really good point. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, it's really just, it can't be more simple than that.
No, I think you're right on the money.
Now, when I saw 2001 projected digitally for that first time, and before the movie, I was like, this is going to be a disaster, because the person running the projector was showing the computer screen and everything, and it was like they didn't know what they were doing. There was a title page, and I was I just want to I hope to get this right. But it had been a little while since I'd seen it on the big screen, and I still found it just as moving as I ever did. And seeing it digitally did not cut the guts out of it or anything like that. But I do have a sentimental attachment to seeing things on film. But
you're not alone. You're not alone.
I don't miss, going up to seeing the film projected badly or out of focus, having to go and complain about the focus or something.
Right.
Or I'm big on also how things are framed. Like if there's too much headroom or too little room at the bottom, like it's cutting off chins and stuff like that. I will definitely complain about something like that. So I'm glad digital's gotten rid of some of that. By the way, I've seen 2001 at least twice. Okay, it's the same print. Okay, I saw a print of 2001 at least twice that had the famous cut of the bone turning into the spaceship completely cut out of it.
What? Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Oh my God. My God. Stanley is spinning over. That's so wrong on so many levels.
Isn't it? But it happened at least twice, and I knew the print. I remember the print was really beat up, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you would go and see, in those days when I was watching prints of certain movies at repertory cinemas, sometimes you could see the very beginning of the print and realize, oh my God, I've seen this print before, and this is really bad. This does not.
Yeah.
But I kind of miss all that stuff. I miss beat up prints and scratches and stuff like that. What can I say? You know, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're here?
Out? Can you? I heard it happening on my end. Yep. Can you hear me, everyone? I'm coming through fine and clear. Yes.
Okay.
You can hear me, Dimitri? I agree with you. It's wonderful to be fine. Awesome stuff. All right. So let me jump back to 2001. I want to ask, want to talk about the Dawn of Man sequence, because as many Kubrick enthusiasts and archivists know, the Dawn of Man sequence was in fact, developed quite late in the project and shot late in the film. In fact, the last thing that was shot, if I'm not mistaken. What was your take on the Dawn of Man sequence? And my follow-up is, in your opinion, how important is it to have started 2001 with that sequence?
Well, it's absolutely essential. I mean, as far as the story perspective goes, I know that a lot of people, I guess, are confused by the Dawn of Man sequence. I guess a newcomer to 2001 would say, "Wait, we're starting with 8." I'm positive that was something that irked my father about the movie.
Right.
I remember him now talking about it beginning with the apes jumping around.
Yeah.
I love the sequence. I love its slow build up at the beginning.
Agreed.
All of those great photographs of the African countries, and so forth, and you slowly start to see living beings, and then the ape, of course, and the way that it kind of clues you into their lifestyle. Obviously without words. Even without words, though, there's a lot of funny things in that first.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I find their jockeying for position in the cave, is funny, and there's that one moment right after the first confrontation with the two groups of apes
at the watering hole. Yeah,
at the watering hole, after Moonwatcher has successfully driven the other apes away. He looks into the camera and does a big "rawr," right into the camera, and I always find that amusing. So, there's and then of course you've got the majestic moments. Obviously, Moonwatcher, discovering the bone as a tool is one of the great sequences. I always look forward to that wonderful, like during that sequence, that wonderful close up of Moonwatcher as he's smashing the bone down.
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, his awakening. I'm a big fan of, purely physical comedy. I'm a lifelong Charlie Chaplin fan, and to your point, I think there is indeed a touch of comedy in the way that Dan Richter, who played Moonwatcher, just does these like beautiful, simple gestures. The head tilt when it's of course the moment when man first realizes that a tool can be a weapon, and there's something in the way that he does that which is in fact, to my sensibilities, and I'm sure many other people's, like just slightly comedic. I love the way he does that. Have you ever gotten to meet Dan Richter, or did you read his book? It's called Moonwatcher's Memoir.
I haven't. It's still I know he's been interviewed for the show, but
he was great. He was wonderful.
Yes, and of course I've listened to that, but I've never gotten to talk with him. In fact, the only one, well, I've gotten to meet only 4 people from uh, from the Kubrick universe, really.
Name them. Name them.
Okay, well, I met Tom Cruise really early on before Eyes Wide Shut.
He's from my hometown. He and I are both graduates from Glen Ridge High School in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In Jersey?
Yes, sir. He was class of '82. I was class of '89.
Wow.
They say I met him as he dated one of my next door neighbor had either 4 or 5 daughters, no sons, and they were all gorgeous. But I would have been, too young to recall. But that's a true story. So Tom Cruise and who were the other 3?
Yeah, I met Tom Cruise in '86 at the premiere of Top Gun in New York City.
Right.
Then many years later, I in quick succession, I met Matthew Modine at the Tribeca.
Awesome.
I met him at the 2008, I think, Tribeca Film Festival, where they screened 2001 in 70 millimeter.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was a guest, and Buzz Aldrin, Marvin Mickelson, who kind of I guess he consulted on 2001 he was a consultant, the AI element of 2001 of on HAL basically. And what's her name? Andrew Yan. Sagan, Carl Sagan's widow was there.
Oh, wow.
Who helped write Contact and so forth. So
yeah.
So they were all there, and I met Modine there, and had a photo taken with him. I said, I've loved so many of your movies. He turned to me, he said, really, name some of them. And I can only name about 4.
Oh, no.
I can only get 4 of them out. But
my gosh.
And
that's hilarious.
I walked away later, going,
yeah.
And this one, but he was nice. I'm not really into getting a lot of autographs or whatever. So he, unless I can get him to sign a movie poster or something, because I collect movie posters.
Sure.
But he gave me a great autograph that where he drew the helmet on it and so forth. And
are you kidding me? That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's a great thing. And then not too long after that, I met Malcolm McDowell.
Wow. Yep.
Which that was a real interesting thing, because he was giving a talk at the Film Forum. No, it was at the Walter Reed Cinema at Lincoln Center.
Okay.
He had just done a film version of his one-man show that was about his relationship with Lindsay Anderson, with whom he did If and Oh Lucky Man and so forth. And they were screening If and Oh Lucky Man, and I knew he was going to be there. So I had already seen If, and I went outside. I had my Stanley Kubrick Archives book with me, and
awesome.
And he came up, and we sat in the lobby and talked for about 20 minutes. And he couldn't have been nicer. And we talked mostly, though, about Oh Lucky Man. If you've never seen Oh Lucky Man, by the way, I'm just saying this to listeners, it's likely to be kind of a blind spot for them. But if you are a fan of A Clockwork Orange, then your fandom of that movie cannot be complete until you see Oh Lucky Man, which was his follow-up to Clockwork Orange. Has a lot of similarities, but a lot of amusing differences to it. So if you've never seen Oh Lucky Man, you must go and see it, especially if you're a fan of that Kubrick film.
Now smile. I beg your pardon? Smile.
Why?
Just do it.
I'm afraid I can't smile without a reason.
Smile.
What's there to smile about?
Just do it.
Why?
Don't ask why.
What's there to smile about?
And then I met Keir Dullea not too long after that at the Film Forum. That's who I met at the Film Forum. He was there for a screening of Otto Preminger's Bunny Lake is Missing. And I got him to sign my 2001 poster, and also a poster for David and Lisa, which he had not seen in many years.
Wow.
Too cool. Yeah, and I actually happened to be outside the theater when he was waiting for his car, and I asked him the only question that I could think to ask him in that realm. I don't know why I asked this question, but he seemed to think it was a little strange. But I said, were there any moments of levity on the set of 2001? I was wondering that because I'd always remembered that Kubrick, displayed great humor on the movies previous to it and after it.
Yes, yes.
On Dr. Strangelove, of course, he famously had to stuff a handkerchief in his mouth to keep from laughing.
I know the story.
The stuff that Peter Sellers was doing.
Amazing.
And then afterwards, his relationship with Malcolm McDowell during the filming of A Clockwork Orange, although it didn't end very well for McDowell and Kubrick, I think that hurt McDowell quite a bit because he thought that they were friends. But they apparently had a wonderful, very, very laugh-filled kind of time doing Clockwork Orange. So I asked Keir Dullea, was Kubrick funny on the set of 2001? Was he jocular in any way? He said, nope, it was all business.
Really? Oh, see, that's interesting because one of the questions we'd come up with that we would love to ask folks who knew him and or worked on his films was, I had this curiosity knowing that an aspect of Kubrick's personality that doesn't get enough recognition is, indeed his sense of humor and obviously a sardonic wit. But I just thought it would be, really cool to ask people who got to work on set, do you recall a time when he made you laugh, or did you tell a joke that made Stanley Kubrick laugh? So I'm fascinated that Keir said no, he was just all business.
Yeah.
Because there are a few production stills I've come across where you can see it's clearly the set on 2001, and Stanley's smiling at something. He's laughing in the presence of other people in some of these photos. So can't be possible that he was entirely devoid of humor, for the making of that one film. And he was a really funny man from, what is out there to read.
I was sort of flummoxed at Dulle's answer, but I believe he was telling the truth. I think that what he was, when he elaborated, he said, he had so many things to juggle on that set between the live action stuff and the special effects aspect of it and the art direction and so forth and the scale of the thing. And not only the physical scale, but the intellectual scale of it.
Yeah.
All of that, I would imagine, at least in Dulle's eyes, he seemed very resolute. No, there was no laughter on that set at all.
Well, you can imagine. I mean, he's also engaged in a tug of war with MGM over, every aspect of production during that. So.
Yes.
That would be enough to make anyone put their nose to the grindstone and just be serious. let alone, someone who took his art and his work as seriously as Kubrick. And I mean, today, 2001 is A Space Odyssey is widely regarded as one of the greatest, most influential films ever made. In 1991, I believe it was deemed a culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant film by the U.S. Library of Congress, and it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. Then in 2010, it was named the greatest film of all time by the Moving Arts Film Journal. Like, what? I mean, we would all agree with you already, but for our listeners, why do you think, Dean, that it's taking on just this huge cinematic mantle?
It's just the biggest story that you can possibly tell. That's the bottom line of it. It's the only movie that tries to go that goes before we were human to the realm of the superhuman. Of course, we haven't reached yet. So
Right.
No other movie can do it. No other movie could ever come close. If any movie ever tries, it'll be lambasted.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine another movie even trying to do anything that 2001 does. I mean, there are a lot of great, mind-blowing, trippy movies, and no question about it. But this particular, this sort of sweeping kind of tale of all of humanity, that's the bottom line of it. The fact that it does it so well is the other part of it, and that all comes from Kubrick's obvious determination. I mean, he was.
If nothing else, he was certainly that. Now, I'm not trying to create any rift amongst our listeners. I do have to ask, obviously, Christopher Nolan, the director, has never been shy about his deep admiration for Kubrick, and there was a lot of talk when Interstellar came out. So there's no right answer. Dean, what was your take on that film?
Blah. Yeah. Can't stand it. I mean, it's a sentimental mess.
You're great.
I like some of his stuff. I mean, obviously, I like Nolan's stuff. I think Dunkirk is one of the best movies of the year, but I don't. I did not react to that movie very well at all. I'd already seen that movie. It was called Contact, and it kind of turned out exactly the same way as Contact did. And Contact, by the way, I went back and took a look at Contact again, and that movie doesn't hold up at all. So
I have to agree. I watched it again only a few months ago. It's unfortunate. There are some movies, don't you find there are some movies that you are rooting for, like you really want to like them and you wish they could be better, so you go back and watch it again, and just the sum of all parts doesn't add up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, movies are like magic tricks, and sometimes you see the trick once, and you already know how it was done, and some of the just magic is totally out of it when you try and go back and watch it for the second time. In the case of Contact, it seems strangely dated. Like even though it was only made in '98 or whatever.
Yeah.
It feels like it's like maybe from the '80s or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some good things about it, but the best thing about it, which is the opening sequence, is actually stolen from another film. It's stolen from a Charles and Ray Eames short film called Powers of 10, which shows that whole thing of the zoom out from the Earth and go into the rest of the galaxy and so forth. That's taken from from another movie. So, I mean, it's really kind of it's an homage to it. I won't say it's stolen, but you know,
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, Powers of 10 is available on YouTube. You just put the title in, and it's about 10 or 11 minutes long, and it's really fascinating. It's got a score by Elmer Bernstein, and
wow,
really it's electronic score, and
wow.
It's a really fascinating piece of animation and documentary filmmaking, and it's great.
The picnic near the lakeside in Chicago is the start of a lazy afternoon, early one October. We begin with a scene 1 meter wide, which we view from just 1 meter away. Now, every 10 seconds, we will look from 10 times farther away, and our field of view will be 10 times wider. This square is 10 meters wide, and in 10 seconds, the next square will be 10 times as wide. Our picture will center on the picnickers, even after they've been lost to sight. 100 meters wide. The distance a man can run in 10 seconds. Cars crowd the highway. Powerboats lie at their docks. The colorful bleachers are Soldiers Field. This square is 1 kilometer wide, 1,000 meters. The distance a racing car can travel in 10 seconds. We see the great city on the lake shore. 10 to the 4th meters, 10 kilometers. The distance a supersonic airplane can travel in 10 seconds. We see first the rounded end of Lake Michigan, then the whole Great Lake. 10 to the 5th meters. The distance an orbiting satellite covers in 10 seconds. Long parades of clouds, the day's weather in the Middle West. 10 to the 6th, a 1 with 6 zeros, 1 million meters. Soon the Earth will show as a solid sphere. We are able to see the whole Earth now, just over a minute along the journey. The Earth diminishes into the distance, but those background stars are so much farther away that they do not yet appear to move. A line extends at the true speed of light. In 1 second, it half crosses the tilted orbit of the moon.
Peter Hyam's sequel, 2010. Now, you were at the press junket for that when you were still in your teens. So
Yes.
Please, I mean, can you tell our listeners about that event? And also, what is your opinion of the film? Does it hold up? And
I'll start with the last part first.
Mhm.
My opinion of the film wasn't very high getting out of the movie. I didn't. There were some things I liked about it. Obviously, I loved seeing the set of the Discovery rebuilt. I loved hearing Douglas Rain's voice again, and getting to hear getting a little background into Hal, but and his motivations. But I feel like the movie kind of really was meant to appeal to people who didn't like 2001.
Yeah, that's something I've heard elsewhere, right?
And didn't appreciate being left without all the answers. So the movie tries to answer things and put a label on things that I prefer be left unlabeled. So yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, but I was still thrilled to be there, and all the major players were there. So almost, in fact, nobody was not. Only Kubrick wasn't there, obviously, but Arthur C. Clarke, Keir Dullea, Roy Scheider. Helen Mirren, who at that time I didn't, she was just becoming known to people stateside. John Lithgow, Bob Balaban, of course Peter Hyams was there.
How are you going to convince your people to allow Americans to go on the flight?
We are going to get there first, and you have the knowledge to make the trip work.
I'm going on the flight.
How far away is Jupiter?
Far.
Mommy said you're going to be asleep for a long time. Are you going to die?
Dr. Floyd. Dr. Floyd. Dr. Arlov has encountered some strange data coming from Europa.
I will send Max down with a pod.
I wouldn't do that.
Oh, really?
You want to send a pod down there, send an unmanned one.
Hey, a piece of pie. Cake. Piece of cake. Cake, yes.
If this date is correct, then there's something down there.
It is correct. It was organic. There was life.
Is it moving?
Yes.
It's incredible. Listen for a minute. We've got to get out of here.
I can't just order us to leave here for no reason.
Forget reason. There's no time to be reasonable.
Can't find him!
Are you sure you are making the right decision? I think we should stop.
You see, something's going to happen.
What?
Something wonderful.
To your point, it was a little disjointing when I saw 2010 in the theater, and all of a sudden, Roy Scheider is Dr. Haywood Floyd. But I mean, that's not to criticize the film, and I do think he did an outstanding job taking on the role, and I enjoyed his performance. But I always do anything he was in.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I mean,
did you get to meet him at the junket?
I did. I get to meet him, and I actually spoke to him. You know, we were doing sort of round robin interviews, so it was like 3 of the people would come and join. You know, it'd be like 10 journalists at a round table, and then 3 people would come and join us for 20 or 30 minutes, and then they would move on to the next table, and then 3 other people would come and 3 other of the participants would come sit down with us and so forth. Of course, at the time, I think I was most thrilled about Arthur C. Clarke, because I thought, oh my God, how am I, you know, and I was too nervous to speak to him, to be quite frank. I had not yet gotten, you know, this was my first celebrity interview ever, and you're faced with all this stuff, and still to this day, I sort of kick myself because I don't have the original recordings. And if I did, I would probably just transcribe them all and publish them. But unfortunately, I don't have them anymore. I recorded some of the interviews, but I knew that I was only going to be able to use a certain amount of it. So there were some of them that I might not have even recorded. But, I have regrets about the 2010, you know, coverage and everything like that. And I was doing it under extreme deadline and wasn't used to traveling back and forth. And it was just the first experience of any of this type of work. So it was a little overwhelming for me. But and also the fact that it was 2010, the sequel to my favorite movie of all time.
Right.
That was an immense pressure and so forth.
Well, you certainly it sounds like you certainly learned from it and learned pretty damn quickly at that.
I did. It was a bit. Huge.
Oh, sorry. No, I mean it must have been. No, so when you were at the junket and you met Arthur C. Clarke along with everyone else. Obviously, 2001 was already your favorite film, but had you also been an Arthur C. Clarke fan? Had you read his novels and short stories by the time you got to meet him?
I had only read his nonfiction work, Man in Space, Man in Space, and The Lost Worlds of 2001, and a couple of other things. I had, of course, read the short story, The Sentinel, but frankly, reading fiction, I'm a huge reader of nonfiction, I've never been a fan of reading fiction.
That's so interesting. Dean, I'm the same way. I'm not kidding you. That's so interesting.
It's weird.
I don't know why. Yeah.
I could kind of pinpoint it to just I just get kind of I just kind of drift away when people are describing things, you know, like, okay, a woman going up a you know, a flight of stairs or something, describing every step and stuff like that.
And yet we both love fiction films. I mean,
that's where I get I just make the excuse that I like seeing the experience and having the experience rather than reading the experience.
Me as well. And I do love to read. It sounds like you love to read too.
I do, but only I like reading about real things.
It's so funny. Wow. Okay, I'm not alone.
I'm glad to know that there's somebody else out there that you know, feels that way.
Agreed. It's wow. What an interesting connection there.
I'm exactly the same, by the way.
Steven is. Yeah. There you go. Mark, have you an opinion? Now I know Mark reads a lot. Mark reads a lot. Period.
I have several book clubs. Yeah, I'm a book club person. I love reading fiction books. Hate nonfiction books.
Yeah, I don't know. I just you know, I've only read 2 books before I've seen the movie. So that is The World According to Garp.
Love them both. John Irving.
And The Shining.
Right.
I read The Shining before the season before the movie came out because I knew the movie was coming out, so I wanted to read it. And I'm still not a huge Stephen King fan. You know, but yeah. So I don't know. It's just the last fiction book that I read was by Nicholson Baker. It's called The Fermata. And
Mark is a fan of his. If Mark wants to say something,
Yeah, I am. Nicholson Baker. I read The Mezzanine, which is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I mean, I think The Fermata is amazing and would make a great movie, but a very difficult movie to make in today's climate.
I'm going to read it now. Thank you for that recommendation.
I don't think anybody could make that into a movie now. Do you know what it's about?
No,
I do not.
No, I don't.
The Fermata has a fascinating storyline, but here it is in a sentence. A man discovers that he has the power to stop time and be the only one moving through it. However, he doesn't use this for any other reason than to take women's clothes off.
Oh my gosh. You gotta love it. Yeah.
That's the story. So, but I always thought that was an interesting subject.
Well, that's certainly the makings of a page turner right there. But
yeah,
I want to bring Steven in. I know Steven has a question for you, Dean, if that's cool.
Okay.
Hi, Dean.
Hi.
Stephen here. Hi. Yeah, you were just talking about Stephen King there. Now, didn't you interview Stephen King in the early days?
I did, and one of these days I'm going to get that up on Filmicability. I interviewed him in 1987, or was it 86? I guess it was 86, because he had just written and directed his first and only movie, which is called Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive. Saw it in the theater. What a stink burger.
Yeah, it's terrible. But at the interview, one of my favorite quotes from anybody that I've ever interviewed before, Stephen King, who was, by the way, I have to say, was under the influence of something, and he would agree. I mean, he would probably admit it now.
Oh,
he's famously sober now. He was definitely coked up. Let me just say that. And in fact, I think he still had some coke in his mouth.
Oh my God!
I saw it. fine. It was just awesome. But but about Maximum Overdrive, he said, this is going to be the greatest science fiction movie of this year. You're not going to get a better science fiction movie than Maximum Overdrive. I'm telling you.
Oh my God.
So, the next month, I guess, came Aliens, James Cameron's Aliens.
Right.
And also Cronenberg's The Fly.
Yeah.
So, my boy, he should have waited before he launched that. Because, man.
Or just kept his mouth shut about singing the praises of his one and only film he directed.
Yeah, that was a real Maximum Overdrive on his part, wasn't it?
He was on Maximum Overdrive. Let me just say that. He was.
Oh my God. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And of course Aliens and The Fly, I remember vividly how they just absolutely dominated the box office. I mean, me and my buddies went to see both at least 3, 4, 5 times in the theater, and everybody talked about them too. Those were the juggernaut films of that summer of '86.
Hi, my name is Stephen King. I've written several motion pictures, but I want to tell you about a movie called Maximum Overdrive, which is the first one I've directed.
Maximum terror.
Jesus coming in here, yes.
Maximum King.
Maybe tomorrow will be our world again.
Dino De Laurentiis presents Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive we went to because we'd heard that the original soundtrack by AC/DC was going to be played at Maximum Overdrive volume. That the movie theaters were actually equipped to project the audio at like concert level.
Right.
It was crazy.
Because it had all that heavy metal in it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The soundtrack was by the band AC/DC, and I just remember like a packed theater with teens, who were all on their own substances, probably just, like weed and crappy American lager. But everybody was just like, it was a raucous event when the AC/DC songs kicked in. All of these metalheads in the theater were like, it was like they were ready to charge the stage at a concert, but there's no band. It's a movie screen.
Yeah.
And I came out of the theater with my buddies, and I think one of them was like, "Oh man, that was awesome," and the rest of us were just like, "Did you just watch the same movie that we did?" That's a movie to be avoided like a turd on a tray of hors d'oeuvres.
With Stanley Kubrick.
I don't got a clue who Stanley Kubrick is. I've heard his name before. Is he some kind of film? Does he produce? Is he a movie producer? Yeah. What are his films? Is it? I don't know what films he's made. Aliens.
I want to jump back, if it's cool, to 2001, because of the age we're now living in with technology, the advances in medicine, human evolution, technology, artificial intelligence. I mean, 2001: A Space Odyssey dealt with a predominant number of those themes. And then, of course, the film AI did, which was, of course, developed by Kubrick and given to Spielberg, produced and directed by Steven Spielberg after Stanley died. What did you think of AI?
Except for I love it. I love it. I love the ideas in it. I hated when people sort of excoriated the movie for having that last 20 minutes, which I thought was the best part of the movie. But People said such absurd things like they wanted the movie to end with him under the water and just leave under the water. What? You want the movie to end like that? That's crazy. But I loved AI. The only things that I didn't like about it were the things that I thought were too Spielbergy. For instance, everyone. Well, I guess there's the Robin Williams cameo, and there's a Chris Rock cameo, where Chris Rock.
That's right.
Playing one of the robots that gets destroyed.
Yeah.
I hated those touches. I also, I kind of bristle at some of the more Spielberg-y flavored moments of the first part of the movie with Haley Joel Osment or David in there with his surrogate family or whatever. Some of that stuff with the other kids I thought didn't ring right to me. But other than that, I really loved it and was moved by it. And I still think that scene with the mother leaving David behind has to be, leaving him to fend for himself out in the woods has to be one of the most shattering moments in the Kubrick and the Spielberg oob. I love it. I love that John Williams score. The Janusz Kaminski photography is fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's I guess one of the best things I can say about it too is that Spielberg was successful in sort of resurrecting Kubrick, at least for a brief moment. There was something about that, the way that it begins and everything with that Ben Kingsley narration with the ocean coming towards us and everything, getting us up to speed on that world. And that there was something that was wonderfully Kubrickian about that, and a great choice. And it just brought Stanley alive just for a moment there.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Cheers. That's well said. Because it was the one last little remnant of sorts that we got. That's all there was after that.
When's your birthday? I never had a birthday.
His name is David.
I feel it. That's creepy. Whoa, feels so real.
In a distant future, in an age of intelligent machines, he is the first robotic child programmed to love and coexist as a member of a family. His is a tale of humanity and a journey to find his place among humans and machines.
I'm a boy.
You are a real boy. At least as real as I've ever made one.
Have you ever seen, I think it's a fairly recent interview with Jan Harlan. He describes his adoration of it, and that he goes so far as to say that he thinks that Kubrick would have loved it. It's basically taken shot by shot from Kubrick's storyboards, which he gave to Spielberg.
Yeah, I think he would have liked it, if not loved it. And it's hard to say. It's hard to. I mean, Kubrick embraced Spielberg as a filmmaker, so not just as a colleague, but as a filmmaker as well. And he wouldn't have given the piece over to him if he didn't think that he could do it right. I like to think that Kubrick might have taken him aside and said, "Did you really have to put Robin Williams and Chris Rock in?" Other than that, I think he would have approved. I think he would have been fine with having Meryl Streep as the voice of the fairy and Ben narrator. But those two things, I don't know. They're a little silly, I guess.
A little schmaltzy. Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That take on it.
I I like some good schmaltz, but that just didn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah, no, I mean, and not to knock Spielberg. There are many people, who are diehard Kubrick enthusiasts who, for some reason or another, feel a need to put Spielberg down, and I am certainly not one of them. I know Steven's not one of them. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark changed my life when it came out, and I mean, I can tell you honestly, Dean, that the very first memory I have of a movie and what a movie meant when I was a small kid, and I remember seeing on the TV screen there was a news broadcast about this new film in theaters, which was causing people to run out of the theater in terror, just like the old monster movies, the Universal monster films had done. And I was just, barely self-aware at that age. But to this day, I can honestly admit that I watch Jaws 4 or 5 times a year, maybe more. I'll just put it on sometimes, and it's one of those films like The Shining and others, 2001, where I'm just so familiar with it that I can almost listen to it as a radio play, or just kind of have it on in the background as a comfort piece while I'm doing something else, or I can just sit back and totally groove out on it. I think Jaws is an amazing, amazing film, and Spielberg obviously did a lot more great work. But for anybody, any listener who wants to, throw Spielberg under the bus, 2 things. Remember that, Kubrick had a very high opinion of him. He envied that Spielberg was such an efficient and prolific filmmaker, and he lamented that he wasn't able to work as fast as Spielberg. He was his personal friend. And the other thing is, go watch Jaws. Anybody who thinks that that Spielberg couldn't do something really great, even on Kubrick's, and the obvious one would be the Hitchcock analogy, something on that level. Spielberg absolutely, capable of that, no question. So, I mean, but so go. I have a question to follow up on that. But what are your thoughts? Yeah.
On Spielberg, just in general, I've he's got hits and misses, and so I lament the misses, but I prefer just to think about the hits. So,
yeah, totally. I mean, I agree.
I don't spend any time thinking about Hook, for instance. That's absolutely the nadir of his career, if you ask me. Is that movie? But
I think the only person who does is Dustin Hoffman. But that's okay.
yeah, because it bought his house. Yeah, but
you're
right. But I'm a huge admirer of Spielberg. I'm not looking forward to Ready Player One, but I am looking forward to The Post. So there's I don't think he should be doing movies like Ready Player One. Stage of his career. I don't know. It's just it doesn't seem like it's going to be a movie that a 71-year-old director should be directing. But I
was very intrigued when I heard talk of it from friends, and then the trailer dropped on YouTube, and I hope I'm wrong, but I was just like, why are you making that? Yeah. And and Spielberg is basically like embodied the young rebel director who went on to help change Hollywood. I mean, there's that great book, I forget the author, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, that talks about what's his name again? Thank you.
Peter Biskind.
Biskind, yes, thank you. I read that in college, and that was just a great read, and it shed so much light at a time when I was barely using the internet for email and nothing else. But Spielberg, he morphed into the classic Hollywood director, and then, we have Kubrick, and he made almost all of his films outside of the Hollywood system, in literal terms, apart from a few in the 50s. He did in fact make them with the Hollywood studios in terms of his finance. So my question, Dean, is what debt do you think Hollywood owes to Kubrick, for instances, like the reinvention of the sci-fi genre with 2001, perhaps even the horror film with The Shining? Do you think his films helped the landscape of films in financial terms for Hollywood movies in general?
Well, I think the big debt that we owe Kubrick is to realize that. Okay, so we've got this massively this art form that's massively collaborative by necessity, and yet Kubrick let us know that a film could still be collaborative, and yet every single aspect of it could bear the mark of its creator, and that it was possible for an artist to work. An artist, we think when we think of artists, people think of painters and so forth. They're writers, and they're working in solitary confinement, and then they release something and out into the world. But with Kubrick working in this realm, it's a little bit more difficult to do that kind of sort of obsessive kind of work on film. And Kubrick and to a certain extent David Lynch have let us know that it is possible to do a film and have every single aspect of it marked by its mastermind.
Right.
But as far as financial, it's weird. I don't think of movies in those terms of I don't think about the fact of what they're making at the box office. I think it's I just don't even think about those things.
Yeah.
As a signpost to quality or whatever.
Right.
I hate it when people say, "Well, it made $5 million at the box office. It must be good."
Yeah.
That's of course not true. I mean, once they have your money, they take it. They take your money, and then it doesn't mean that you're going to come out of the theater saying, "Well, that was the greatest thing in the world" or whatever. So it's that's success in marketing. It doesn't necessarily mean the movie is a success. We owe a big debt of gratitude to those film execs. Like, I guess it was Roger Mitchell from MGM that sort of stood behind Kubrick while the budget for 2001 was ballooning. It was originally a $6.5 million budget that went to 10.5, which doesn't sound like a lot these days, but back then it was like spending $150 million on a movie. So we owe a debt of gratitude not only to him but also to John Calley, who protected Kubrick and let him do things the way he wanted them to be done. When he moved over to Warner Brothers after 2001,
right.
He pretty much.
Those are really good points about Roger Mitchell and John Calley. Having Stanley's back, and in that respect, just as integral in the debt that is owed by Hollywood to Kubrick and his legacy.
I think that those two guys, their actions and backing Kubrick, I think that let Hollywood know that it is within their grasp to act as a patron to people who have filmmakers, artists that have difficult and intriguing visions. So
But I mean, the intriguing vision, of 2001 was just, profound. Doesn't even begin to, touch its impact on popular culture. I mean, straight ahead, up to the pop-up video commentary that you were commissioned to write for Turner Network Television back in the day. Its influence is still, TV commercials, Family Guy, Simpsons, what have you. But when you were commissioned to write the pop-up video commentary for 2001 by Turner Network Television, do you remember how that came about? And I know it's not available, but what exactly is that, Dean? Because it sounds cool.
Well, okay. So you're asking, what is the pop-up?
Yeah.
Well, basically, if you remember back in the late 80s to early 90s, maybe it was the early 90s, they started having, MTV started showing videos, and they would have they would have pop-up video.
It was called pop-up video, and they, in fact, stole the idea from a show based out of Minnesota called Mystery Science Theater 3000, which has gotten a resurgence in popularity. They did a crowdsourcing and came back on Netflix. It was a guy. The premise is a guy and his two robot pals are shanghaied in a satellite in a geosynchronous orbit around the Earth, and these mad scientists back on Earth send them these B movies, which they're forced to watch. And at the time it came out, I was hooked immediately because I thought, these guys are just doing what countless nerdy American teens like us did, which is, talk over the Kung Fu movies, the Saturday afternoon drive-in TV shows they had. Mystery Science Theater 3000, may not have pioneered that in the sense that, a lot of people were already doing it, but I remember MST3K. I still love it to this day. One of my very favorite shows. The writing in it is just brilliant, and it touches upon everything in pop culture.
You're wondering how he eats and breathes and other science facts. Then repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax. For Mystery Science Theater 3000.
And then I remember noticing when I believe it was VH1, MTV's offshoot, started to do that program you're talking about called Pop-Up Video. And I was like, oh, way to ape, somebody else's idea. But it has since become a thing. And it's, no longer a matter of aping someone else's idea. It's just, at the time, MST3K tapped into a void of a market, and the zeitgeist for the need for that pop culture cross-referencing is still with us.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get commissioned by TNT to do your pop-up video? And did they run it? Did they ever run it?
You know what? Okay, so an editor it was actually for Turner Classic Movies.
Okay.
But I was working at Turner Network Television at the time. And they knew me. They knew. At that time, I had worked there for about 4 years,
mm-hmm.
and they knew that I knew my stuff.
Right.
The editor that asked me to do it knew that 2001 was my favorite movie. We had discussions about it. And so he thought that I would be the perfect person to do it. He had read some of my stuff that, I was there at the beginning for the Turner Network Television website. I was the one that told the marketing people that we needed to have something called a website.
For Turner What's Network. That?
Yeah, they didn't know what it was. I was there, working, answering emails for viewers of the network and so forth. And I was part of the programming department there.
Oh, that's where I remember you from now. Yeah, you were the guy who wrote me that nasty "Leave us alone, I'm busy here." I'm kidding.
I always and people could ask anything, and I was very forthcoming, and I was very good at the job.
No, I'm teasing. I'm sure.
But occasionally you would get some people that would rub you the wrong way.
So why doesn't somebody put that on the next DVD release, the next Blu-ray. I mean,
I don't know.
Sounds
to
me like that. Yeah, as a special features guy.
Funny. I never saw. Okay, first of all, okay, when I did the piece, I sat down and said, okay, this is going to be my opportunity to say everything I want to about this movie. But I wanted to stay away, like I said earlier, I wanted to stay away from kind of trying to dissect it for people or explain it for people or anything like that. Also, so I sat down to write this thing, and I think I went overboard. This piece, because if you've ever seen a pop-up video for something, just like a Go-Go's video or something where they do the pop-up video on it, the pop-ups that come up are only about a sentence or two, maybe.
Right.
Whereas if you look at the thing that I wrote, it's 30,000 words.
Well, I mean, I'm a special features junkie. I know there's an army of us around the world. I just can't imagine why that won't get put out on like a future Blu-ray release.
I have no idea what happened to it. I never saw a version of it. I know a version of it was created because I know some people who saw it on the air. But
wow.
I never got to see it. I got paid for it, but I didn't. I never got to see it. I never got a copy.
Oh my God! Ain't that a kick in the pants?
I know it really. It's okay though. And it's funny. The piece that you see online now, it lived for about 20 years in my files. Like I didn't even have like the original computer file that I had written it on. I had to go back and take the 25, 30 page piece and rekey it into the computer. And in that process, I also expanded it. So it's now quite a bit. It's probably about 5,000 or 7,000 words bigger than it was when I first submitted it to Turner Classic Movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, here's an idea. Maybe you'd be willing to work with Steven in post-production and doing like a bit of a simulation.
I'd love to do that.
Because that's got to be out there, man. That's so cool.
Yeah. When they gave me the assignment, they gave me a copy of the movie on VHS that had a SIPD time code on it.
Which stands for
Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineer.
And so I would have to write out the time code part where I thought the particular pop-up piece should pop up at. And I tried to read it and see if this length of time would be enough for this particular piece of information. So I really had to sit down and time it all out and make sure that it worked, and I had to speak it and so forth to make sure that it would read properly. And so when it was all over, when I went from the first frame of the movie to the last frame, the thing was 30 pages long, single space. So really 60 pages, it's double spacing. It just, but a lot of that stuff, of course I have it, I have I have a bibliography. So I did have sources, obviously. But a lot of that stuff just came from my memory because I had read about 2001 so often. Particularly, you guys must have this book, The Making of Kubrick's 2001 by Jerome Agel. Have you ever? That's a great little paperback book that was done like in the early 70s, I think. And that book was my Bible. Like I would carry that. I would carry that to school, to high school, and read it constantly. It was always on me. I had friends, because it had 90 pages of pictures in it, and friends would like to look at the pictures and stuff. And but I think everybody was like very confused about my colleagues in school were very confused about my love of this movie. But
yeah.
So I mean, it's something that I had, a lot of that information that's in the filmicability piece, in the pop up, was just stuff that was ingrained in my head. It took about 2 weeks to write, and then when I initially back in the 90s, and then when I picked it out of my files, I said, I've got to put this down before it just disappears. And that took another 2 weeks just to type it all in and format it and expand it, and then illustrate it with the frame grabs from screen musings, and also the links, which I still have some links that I have to add to the articles. It appears on Filmicability right now, but so I'll probably still put in another few hours on it. But so it's taken me a long time to do that.
We now have our live remote man on the scene. SCAS field reporter Mark Lentz is on location in New York at 1633 Broadway, now known as Paramount Plaza. It's a 48-story skyscraper which opened in Midtown Manhattan in 1970. It was built on the site of the former Capitol Theater, where 2001: A Space Odyssey premiered exactly 50 years ago at 8:30 p.m. on the 3rd of April, 1968. I'm now going to hand it over to Mark, who is there to commemorate the film's 50th anniversary. Over to you, Mark.
Let's see, it's now 7:57, and the movie started at 8:30. So people would have been queuing up here. I'm actually this new tower, which to my mind resembles the monolith. It was the style that was popular at that time, which I guess is called the tower in the square. So that the tower itself is set back from the sidewalk, and I'm sitting here in the plaza. I am the only one sitting here. Reminds me of one time I was at the Museum of Modern Art, and I came across Van Gogh's Starry, Starry Night. And I was the only one looking at it at that moment. And the guard wasn't looking at me. I felt this tremendous sense of responsibility and privilege. So I guess I feel a little of that now. I'm also reminded of Wallace Shawn's play, The Designated Mourner, where somebody in certain tribes, if somebody dies and you don't have any family, then the tribe designates a mourner to go through all the motions to mourn for this person. Today I'm the designated celebrant of 2001 during the half hour before the premiere, and then the moment of it starting, which is in 20 minutes. And I was kind of hoping maybe I'd see a ghost or two. Right now, I guess to everyone else, I'm just a crazy person talking to myself in a wet plaza. 2001 ran for 26 weeks here. 1633 Broadway was originally known as the Uris building for, I don't know, whatever rich guy built it. I guess he had some company. But in order to build one of these block wide skyscrapers, they not only tore down the Capitol Theater, but several theaters that were right behind it. And as part of doing that, they had to give something back, as we say in RoboCop. And that was to build some theaters within this building. So this building still contains a gigantic theater. So I'm actually standing in the plaza, and therefore in the lobby, the space where the lobby would have been for the Capitol Theater. And I'm now walking back towards the street and looking at Broadway and the Winter Garden Theater across the street, which is pretty much just like it would have been. All these buildings right directly across the street are still the same as what anyone would have seen back in 1968. I don't know what was showing there, what was playing over at the Winter Garden then, but it's known these days for an endless run of Cats, followed by an almost equally endless run of Mamma Mia. And now what do we got? School of Rock. I'm planning to spend the full hour until 9 on this plaza. I set it up as a meetup for our New York Kubrickians, but I'm doubtful if anyone will show up. It's misty. It was rainy all day, but now it's just kind of misty and foggy, which is actually the nicest kind of night in New York City, I think, because of all the light, all the illumination. It's caught by the fog. I believe that Kubrick would probably have been interviewed, let's see, from, he probably was standing in the middle of the street.
We started in 1965, early 1965. Well, I became interested in the idea that the universe was full of intelligent civilizations, which is the current scientific belief. Well, the facts in the film only help you believe the story, but the scientists know now that there are about 100 billion stars in our galaxy and about 100 billion galaxies in the visible universe. The point is that there are so many stars in the universe that the likelihood of life evolving around them, even if it were possibilities of 1 in a million, there would be hundreds of millions of worlds in the universe.
Broadway's about 3 lanes wide at this point, and I saw in a picture that they had the traditional spotlights shining in the air, the truck with the spotlights on it. Haven't seen one of those in years, because I don't think there's been many premieres around here in years. Got to talk quickly because it's now 8:20, and I do want to observe a minute of silence at 8:30. I am going to record a minute of silence at 8:30. That would have been when the music started playing, and nobody knew what was going to happen. So, all right. There should be some kind of monument here, I think. You know what would be perfect? There should be a monolith sitting here. It would fit perfectly in this square. It should go right where that Warner Brothers music group. I think I'm going to post that on the Scott site. But wait, it's now 8:27. I think I'm going to stop talking at 8:30 and just record a minute of New York sound, 50 years to the minute, from that opening silence as people were waiting for the curtain to go up. Everyone got quiet, the lights were going down, sense of expectation. And in retrospect, the surprising thing is that even one person is sitting here 50 years later. I don't think Stanley would have imagined that, or anybody. You know, what other movie do we remember 50 years later? Can't think of one. But no, I think 2001 was the biggest event as such, cultural turning point. I got to keep an eye on the time here, 8:28. But okay, I'm going to be quiet because it's now 8:29. I'm going to just record a moment of silence. a minute of silence, starting in just seconds from now. New York, April 3rd, about to be 8:30, 2018. Starting in just a couple seconds now. One thing in New York that's endlessly part of New York, it's sirens. Always sirens going somewhere. Okay, that was 1 minute.
Speaking of long time, you've been so great to give us so much of yours, Dean, and I don't want to keep you. I know it's also pretty late where Steven is. Can I just ask one last question, and then we'll let you go?
Absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, it's just in reference to MGU. I mean, Movie Geeks United, the podcast that you co-host with Jamie Duvall and Jerry Dennis, and I'm sure many of our listeners would be quite familiar with. You'd been producing a continuing series on Kubrick called the Kubrick series, with its spin-off shows Kubrick Uncut. So not so much a question, but please tell our listeners about that so they can check it out.
Let me just say this about the Kubrick series. I know that Jamie has done a thing where it's now like monetized, like you have to buy a kind of a subscription to it to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when you buy the subscription, which is a $10 subscription, you get not only the entire Kubrick access to the entire Kubrick series and access to all of the uncut interviews. But also, you will get. We still have two more episodes to do, and I know that Jamie is getting ready to drop the Full Metal Jacket episode.
Oh, cool!
Where we'll have conversations with Matthew Modine and Vincent D'Onofrio at least.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure who else he's got connected with that. In that piece. And then, of course, he'll get on to Eyes Wide Shut. Why is it taking so long for Jamie to do this piece? And I would say the reason is that he's never been a huge fan of Full Metal Jacket. So it's taken him a long time to do it because he hasn't been able to get up enough enthusiasm to do it. But I kind of got on him a little bit and said, well, you got to finish it. We got to get to Eyes Wide Shut so we have the whole thing.
Right.
And I know that he's a huge Eyes Wide Shut fan, so I think that will be maybe a little easier. I'm not sure.
That'll motivate him. Yeah, that'll motivate him. That's going to be great. I mean, SCAS, Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society, and our podcast, The Kubrick's Universe, will definitely help get the word out, as we obviously owe you guys a huge debt to begin with, and you really broke the ground on getting that off and up and running. I mean, it's really compelling listening, and
I'm just all I have to say is I'm lucky to be connected to it. I mean, it's really Jamie Duvall's work that we're seeing there.
Yeah.
And he's just amazing, and he's an amazing interviewer, and he's got also a great just keeping the show going and everything. He's a fabulous editor. I'm just lucky to be part of it, really, and to be fair, they're lucky to have me.
Yeah, hey, amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Well, I agree with the first part of what you said, and I mean, I can relate in that I feel really honored to be a part of Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society and now Kubrick's universe, and we're just trying to get it right. I really hope you enjoyed your time with us. I want to bring Steven and Mark back in, but that's all great, Dean, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure the listeners really got a kick out of it, man. Thanks so much.
I thank you, and I'm honored to have been asked to do it, and I thank you guys for tuning into the show, and I just I'll just keep on doing it as long as I can.
Please, yeah, do. You just keep on doing what you do until it's done. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the inimitable one and only Dean Treadway. Thank you so much for joining us on Kubrick's Universe, Dean. You're the man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean and Jason. We spoke to Dean on the 29th of September 2017. Don't forget to check out Dean's podcast at Movie Geeks United and Dean's great website. Just Google Filmicability and you'll find it. Thanks to Mark Lentz, who joined us on the show and also helped with research. Mark runs our SCAS chapter in New York City. If you are in the area and would like to attend Kubrick-themed events, just Google Stanley Kubrick Meetup and join the group. This year, 2018, they are focusing on 2001 at 50 and have already held around a dozen 2001 themed events in the city, with many more coming up. Thanks to Wiggy from Accrington and Daz from Barrowford for telling us who is Stanley Kubrick. And of course, thanks to our host, Jason Furlong. Thanks to James Marinaccio and Jason for keeping the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society on Facebook in check. Next episode, we will be chatting with film director David O'Reilly about his latest film, the award-winning Kubrick by Candlelight. I'm now going to leave you with a behind-the-scenes look at the inner workings of SCAS Central. I'm Stephen Rigg. Tatty bye.
You had a long day.
Hey, and guess what I've been doing before, right up to us joining onto this podcast? I've been editing Filippo's interview as well.
Of course you have. Because you are the caretaker.
I've been reading Filippo's book all day, so...
Yeah. Isn't it a good book, that?
It's a great book.
I was telling Jason that somehow Stanley has reached out from the grave and made us all his slaves.
Well, his army anyway. Yeah, he's enlisted us. He's enlisted us to be the new army.
The undead Kubrick army.
Well, certainly not. I was going to say certainly not an army of zombies. I mean, so yeah. Well, I mean, so that makes sense. Steven's been editing, you've been reading, and I spent the entire afternoon profusely masturbating. But that's that's like a normal weekday for me. I mean, it's par for the course.
You've got to prepare yourself for these conversations, haven't you?
Yeah. How do you deal with the
tension? Yes.
Yeah, you gotta just shake it off. Shake it off.
It's Kubrick's universe. We just live in it.
We have taken very thorough precautions in this podcast against broadcasting anything which might only be attributed to human error.
Come back soon.